Hello everyone, this is K. Abhishek Yashraj. So for today, we are going to learn about middle ear, okay? So before going to learn about middle ear, I'll also tell you that how to write it in an exam, okay, in the university examination. But before that, I'll tell you something in a different manner in order to make it understand or easy for you, okay? So this is the cranium, right? This is the skull. When you remove the top part of the skull, okay, when you remove the top part of the skull, you can see that there are three kinds of fossas or depressions. This is the anterior cranial fossa, the middle cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa. Okay. Now, these fossas are nothing but the depressions. Now, if it comes to say, where is our middle ear present? Our middle ear is present in the middle cranial fossa. Okay. And more precisely, we can say that our middle ear is present in the temporal bone or the space provided by the temporal bone. The temporal bone is there, right? In between it, inside it, there is space actually. So in that space, there we have the temporal bone. We have the middle ear. So the temporal bone has few parts, totally 3 parts. A squamous part, you can touch it with your palm on the side of your head. This is the squamous part, and next you'll be having the mastoid part. This is the mastoid part, okay, which we also call it as, this is the mastoid process, right? So the mastoid process will be coming from the mastoid part of the temporal bone, right? So the mastoid bone part and the squamous part of the temporal bone, and this is the petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay, the inside part is the petrous part of the temporal bone. So in this petrous part of the temporal bone, we'll be having the middle ear, right? Okay. Now, basically, you can see this is how you remember actually from the childhood. You have learned the middle ear or the ear diagram in this way, right? In this manner, in this plane, right? Same to same. This two-dimensional view is the same common one that you have read it in your 10th standard textbooks or the earlier ages. So just see that in order to see the anatomy of the middle ear, we have to get into imagination straight away into it. In order to get into it, I'll be telling you from which view you have to view the middle ear. So imagine that there's a boy standing in this manner, okay? So from this sideward point of view, you're seeing the ear. You're seeing the ear, okay? Stand in front of him, like that means side of him, and you're seeing this particular ear from this angle, okay? From this angle. Now, as you stood over here, your eye is over here, right? And you're seeing, okay, the ear. So when you're seeing the middle ear, you can see that there is the eardrum over here, right? There's a eardrum. So remove this eardrum, or else imagine that this eardrum is a door having a knob over here. So open it outward. So when you open it outward, you'll be having this diagram or this image or this kind of imagination you will be receiving. Okay, you understood, right? So this middle ear is actually has a shape like this. See, it has a superior wall, an anterior wall, okay, a posterior wall, and a medial wall and a lateral wall. Okay, so totally how many walls are there? 6 walls are there. Okay, see, this will become the medial wall, this will become the lateral wall, whereas this pink portion will become the posterior, and the front portion will become the anterior, and the superior portion will become the superior wall. Okay, the superior portion will become the superior wall, and the inferior portion will become the inferior wall. Medial, lateral, superior, inferior. The front of it would be anterior, and this pink portion behind it will be the posterior. Okay, understood? So from this side, so from this side you're just seeing, and you open this door outward, and you'll be getting this image. Okay, so from here it is entirely of the examination view. I'll just tell you, just in the examination, if they will be asking you it as a long answer question, just draw this diagram. Okay, in order to draw this diagram, I'll first explain you what it is actually. Over here, this is shown as the anterior wall. Okay, and this is shown as the posterior wall. This is shown as the superior wall, and this is shown as the inferior wall, and this portion is known as the medial wall, and this portion is known as the lateral wall. Okay, you understood the walls, right? This is the anterior wall, posterior wall. Okay, or else the other names I'll be telling. This anterior wall is there, right? Next, this posterior wall. This posterior wall is nothing but it is also, we can also call it as the mastoid wall. See, over here we are having the mastoid process, right? This process would be from the mastoid part of the temporal bone. That means this part would be the mastoid part of the temporal bone. Okay, posteriorly. Okay, so we can also call it as mastoid wall, this wall. Okay, over here what can you see? Internal jugular vein. So this inferior wall can also be called as jugular wall. Okay, now the superior wall which is there, this is the superior wall, right? You can also call it as petrous part, okay, of the temporal bone forms the superior wall. Got it? Right? Now this medial wall can be also called as labyrinthine wall. Labyrinthine is nothing but it refers to the inner ear. This inner ear has bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. That is why I'm calling the medial wall as the labyrinthine wall. If it comes to the lateral wall, you can call it as the tympanic wall. Why? Because you have the tympanum or the eardrum. Okay, this is the tympanum or the eardrum, right? So in the exam, just mention keep the heading middle ear, then you mention about the boundaries. Okay, the boundaries and the other names. Now you mentioned the boundaries and everything. Now what should we mention? We should mention the contents. Okay, we should mention the contents. What all features are present? We just mention the heading as features and do write it down. Okay, so what all are present? So if you see over here in this petrous part or the superior part, okay, superior part means this part, right? Superior part, we have, as you see over here, you can say that we have tegment tympani. What is tegment tympani? I'll tell you. If you see over here, you can say that over here there should be brain, right? And the brain has the coverings dura mater. Next comes the dura mater, arachnoid, and the pia mater, right? So pia mater is the innermost, whereas if this is brain, okay, over here first comes the dura mater. So this dura mater will be in relation with the cranial bone, right? So the dura mater, okay, the dura mater and the middle ear or the middle cranial fossa will be both differentiated, okay, with the help of tegment tympani. With the help of tegment tympani. This tegment tympani is just like a scrapy bone, okay, that is present between the dura mater of the brain and the middle ear, okay, in order to just differentiate. This is tegment tympani. This is, you can see, this is the dura mater, arachnoid, and also pia mater, right? So this is tegment tympani at the superior wall. Now if it comes to anterior wall, okay, anterior wall, I'll say you that we have in the anterior, see, in the, you can see, right, this is ear. Over here somewhere we are having the middle ear, but over here we are having the pharynx and all that stuff. So from over here to here you'll be having the eustachian tube. You should have the eustachian tube. That means in the anterior wall you'll be having a tubal opening. Okay, I'm just telling you the basic. Next I'll tell you the other features also. Tubal opening. Now what else can I see? I can also see that there is an internal carotid artery over here. Okay, what is this internal carotid artery? If you remember the cavernous sinus, Okay, you can see that from the or else the blood supply of the brain. You can remember that from the internal carotid artery you'll be getting the continuation as the middle cerebral artery. Okay, remember, I just told you this because in order that you can relate it when you read the other topics also. Okay, internal carotid artery. This internal carotid artery will be in the carotid canal. Okay, will be in the carotid canal. I'll tell you more. Okay, so if you see the inferior wall, you can see that the internal jugular vein, right? Internal jugular vein in the inferior wall. That is why we are calling this inferior wall as the jugular wall. Okay, now if you see that there's something like in this way, right? This structure is nothing but the facial nerve. Okay, this is nothing but the facial nerve. The facial nerve comes over here. See, over the abducent nerve, it takes a turn. Over the abducent nerve, it takes a turn. Over if this is the abducent nerve nucleus, the facial nerve takes a nerve which is called as the internal genu. Again, it comes over here, and over here again, it takes a turn. It takes a turn, and this turn is known as external genu. Okay, this turn is known as external genu. Then this facial nerve travels over here, and at the posterior wall it travels in the facial canal. This part is known as facial canal. Okay, in the facial canal this facial nerve travels. Now I'll tell you the other thing is that in this posterior wall itself, I told you what this posterior wall could be also known as the mastoid wall. Why? Because, and in this there's a characteristic feature. So remember, this mastoid part has air cells. Okay, so for this mastoid air cells, that means it is a space, and there is also the air spaces are present. So for the mastoid bone opening and the mastoid air cells, where you can get into those mastoid air cells, this is the opening that is known as editus ad antrum of mastoid bone. Okay, editus ad antrum. Okay, so in the posterior wall we have seen the facial canal and the editus ad antrum. Done. Now in the medial wall, what it should be, the inner ear entry, that is the oval window, and the round window has to be there, and in the lateral wall you should see the tympanic membrane, right? Done. Now I'll tell you the more deeper features which are present. Okay, see, in the lateral wall you can see two bones, malleus and incus. Okay, malleus and incus, and you can see there is a nerve that is coming through the facial canal. What is it? It is nothing but the chorda tympani nerve. This chorda tympani nerve comes out as a branch from the facial nerve, and it travels between the malleus and incus bone. Remembered? Done. Okay, now this facial canal which is there has a pyramidal prominence. Okay, the P stands for pyramidal prominence, and through this pyramidal prominence we'll be having the stapedius muscle. Okay, origin occurs from here through this pyramidal prominence, and stapedius muscle, that means it has to go and insert with the stapes bone, and it inserts at the neck of the stapes bone. Okay, so this is the pyramidal prominence. We have done with the pyramidal prominence also. Next, as we can see, there is a central region that is promontory. Okay, what is promontory? Promontory means a prominence. Okay, in the medial wall of the middle ear we can see a prominence. This prominence is nothing but, you know that there is cochlea, right? Cochlea takes first and second turn, 2.5 turns or something. So the first turn which is there, this promontory is nothing but the impression of the first turn. Okay, due to the first turn there is a prominence on the medial wall, that is known as promontory. Okay, and in this promontory you can see some plexus kind of a thing, right? This is nothing but a tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal nerve comes out. Okay, tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal nerve comes out. If I have to tell you, this glossopharyngeal nerve is nothing but the 9th cranial nerve. So from the 9th cranial nerve you'll be getting the tympanic branch. Okay, got it? if I have to be more clear, so that means this internal jugular vein and also the glossopharyngeal nerve, are they both side to side or nearer to each other? You can ask me like that. Yes, they are. Why? Because I'll tell you. See, there is a jugular foramen over here. Okay, there is a jugular foramen over here, and over here, jugular means it has to contain one thing. A jugular vein, internal jugular vein will be contained, and 9, 10, 11 nerves will also be contained. So ninth nerve is nothing but the glossopharyngeal nerve. So from there you are getting the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve forming a plexus. Okay, so promontory is also done. Simple. Now if you can see, there is internal carotid artery, right, and it is present in the carotid canal, and in the carotid canal also there is an important thing that we should know. There is a plexus, okay, which is termed to be as the carotid plexus, and from there, okay, so there is also a tympanic branch of the carotid plexus. Got it? That is also done. We also did the tympanic branch of the carotid plexus. That is also done. So now what else we are left with? We are done with the eustachian tube opening. Now something, see, you can see tensor tympani, okay, a semi-canal opening for the tensor tympani muscle. What is tensor tympani? Tell me. See, tensor tympani is actually a muscle. By the, okay, first I'll tell you the origin and insertion. It starts from the, see, in the anterior wall, it starts over here, where from the semi-canal opening over here, from it takes the origin and it goes like this. You can see something called PC over here, right? That is known as processus cochleariformis. Processus cochleariformis. Okay, processus cochleariformis. Now you will be telling, what is it, sir? It is nothing but an elevation over the. It is an elevation, okay, from the anterior wall that is coming. Okay, it is an elevation that is from the anterior wall. Now this tensor tympani muscle will go like this, and it will arch over here. Okay, where this process cochlearis will form or act as a pulley, and it will go like this and attach to the malleus bone. Okay, malleus bone. And okay, so tensor tympani muscle is also done. Stapedius muscle is also done. Now, what is the function of this tensor tympani muscle and the stapedius? See, these muscles are very important. During any noise pollution or very high levels of sound, these muscle contracts or tenses, okay, leading to the decreased volume of the middle ear. When the middle ear volume decreases, that means the air that is present in it should also be decreased, because volume has been decreased. And over here you also have the tubal opening. From here the air can also go out. So as the volume is decreased, air particles are also decreased, so vibrations would be also decreased. Okay, done. So that is how they'll act in the reduction in the noise levels. Okay, and protects you from any injury. It protects the inner ear from any injury. So we are also done with the muscles and their function. Remember, this processus cochlearis acts as a pulley for tensor tympani. Okay, now this is oval window, this is round window, right? And something called S, you can see, that is nothing but the tympanic sinus. So now you'll be asking me, what is tympanic sinus, sir? This tympanic sinus is actually a hollow space that is present on the medial surface of the inner ear. Okay, now this space is actually present between two projections. There is a there is a two elevations over here, like called as, below the oval window you'll be having ponticulus, okay, and above the round window you'll be having the subiculum. Okay, ponticulus and subiculum. Between these two there is a depression or a space known as tympanic sinus. Okay, now we are left with the, now you know that now you know that these are semicircular canals, right? In the semicircular canals we'll be having a lateral canal, right? So the three perpendicular canals will be there, out of which there is a lateral canal also, lateral semicircular canal. So that lateral semicircular canal forms a prominence. So, and we can see the prominence over here. That's it. We are done with the middle ear contents and everything. Okay, is it easy? So in the exam, just write the boundaries, draw this diagram first. You remembered it, right? Do not at all try to first try to imagine it, and you'll know the names, and it is very easy. Okay, you can make it in a span of 30 40 या फिर 1 minute is just very enough to make this entire diagram. Okay, now you'll be drawing this diagram. You'll be also writing the contents. Write down it as like anterior wall contents. What are they? Write these 3. Just draw this diagram and just write it down what you have drawn in this diagram, and that is enough, and you can be scoring a very high marks. Okay, now the important thing we should see is nerve supply. There is sensory nerve supply as well as motor nerve supply. Under the sensory nerve supply, we'll be having first as tympanic branch. Okay, tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. I'm not writing the full name. Okay, write it down. Tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, or cranial number 9. Okay, now the other branch is auricotemporal nerve. It is a branch of trigeminal nerve. Okay, just write it down. See, in order to understand more clearly, we have to deal with all the nerves separately. Okay, the cranial nerves separately, and also if we have to also deal with the arterial supply also, we should deal with all the arteries separately, like the maxillary artery and the external carotid artery, its branches, everything separately, and their branches. So we'll be knowing more easily. Okay, I'll be telling you later, but but I'm telling you the nerve supply and also the arterial supply now, because in order to make it a full answer. Okay, now the motor supply will be what will be the motor supply? There is stapedius muscle, and there is also tensor tympani muscle. So for tensor tympani muscle, there is a branch, that is the nerve supply coming from the trigeminal nerve itself. So under motor supply, you'll be writing the trigeminal nerve only for the tensor tympani muscle, and for the stapedius muscle, it would be the facial nerve. Okay, a branch of facial nerve will be supplying the stapedius muscle. Just write it down over here. I'm not wasting the time. Now, if it comes to arterial supply, this is more important. Okay, if it comes to arterial supply, remember there are 6 arteries that are supplying the middle ear. Now, according to the locations I'm telling you, remember anterior tympanic artery which is a branch of maxillary artery. Anterior tympanic artery. You know, right? Maxilla bone. Touch it with your hand. No, touch it. Okay, touched it. That's the maxilla bone. Over there is a maxillary artery. From there you are getting an anterior tympanic artery. 1, right? So, and the other thing which is there is we also have like, where should I over here I told you that there is mastoid bone. You can see over here, this is the mastoid process. This is the styloid process. Okay, mastoid part and the styloid part, right? So the stylomastoid artery, okay, there is also a stylomastoid artery which is a branch of posterior auricular artery. Let me write down. Okay, 1, anterior tympanic artery from the maxillary artery. 2, stylomastoid artery, which is a branch of posterior auricular artery. Done. Now 3, petrous part, petrous branch, which is a branch of middle meningeal artery. Okay, I'm not mentioning the full name. Now we also have superior branch of middle meningeal artery. Now another 2 we are left with. Now we also have a pterygoid canal over here. Okay, so we also be having a pterygoid branch, artery of the pterygoid arterial branch, you can mention. Okay, pterygoid arterial branch. Now, as you can see over here, see, there is an intercanal carotid artery, right? You can just mention it out like the branch from the internal carotid artery. Simple. Okay. So what did I say? Just a minute. Anterior tympanic artery, which is a branch of maxillary artery. Petrous branch of middle meningeal artery. Superior branch of middle meningeal artery. Over here I told you pterygoid canal will be there. Pterygoid branch or a branch of pterygoid. Okay. You can say it as artery from the pterygoid branch. Okay. Now the other thing which are present is stylomastoid artery, which is a branch of posterior auricular artery. That is the arterial supply. If it comes to venous drainage, just remember that. I'll tell you easily. There is an internal auditory vein. Okay. Internal auditory vein. And we also have a vein to cochlea, a vein to vestibule. Okay. These three drain the middle ear, and from these three it goes and drains into the inferior petrosal sinus. Okay, inferior petrosal sinus and sigmoid sinus. I'll be telling you what is inferior petrosal sinus and the sigmoid sinus in the venous drainage of the scalp or venous drainage of the brain. Okay, I'll tell you over there. That is more important. Okay, so but whatsoever, I'll be telling you what is inferior petrosal and the sigmoid sinuses are. See, sinus is I'll tell you in the next class. Why? Because it is bit, again I have to explain it like it is theoretical and imaginative. So I'll be telling you later. Over here only, this is petrous bone, right? In this petrous bone, if the sinus is running over here, okay, venous blood containing sinus is running over here, upper part, superior. If it is running below, it is inferior. Okay, so the venous drainage at last would be in this inferior petrosal sinus, and the sigmoid means S-shaped sinus. So there's also an S-shaped sinus. Okay, so in that S-shaped sinus and the inferior petrosal sinus, the venous drainage will be. So this is all about the middle ear. So how would you write it? Write the boundaries, draw this diagram, draw the content, write down the contents. When you write down the contents, it will just take out like 2 sides or else 2.5. See that you are legible presentation, and write the nerve supply. Do not waste your time. Nerve supply and the arterial supply, venous drainage. Done. Okay. Thank you.